Welcome to the Hip Hop Hustle podcast. I am extremely excited about my next guest, my current guest, the one and only Reyes. The man's been through a journey, to say the least. Literally a journey. He's made an official comeback. It was 4 years you took time off between making music, and we'll get into that story at some point during the show. I don't want to steal the thunder of you being able to say it, but he's got a track, All Good, which is out right now. It's by Madchild and, of course, Reyes, who I'm speaking with today. Extremely interesting and difficult story in terms of what you went through. But I always love having guests on the show that go through hardship in the sense that they overcome it. I hate that people have to go through hardship to find the strength and to kind of build into what they become. But there is a part of me that's also like, without that, then you're not challenged enough to become the person that you are now. So it's a weird dichotomy to me of like, it's bad, but it's good. But now it's this whole weird place that I kind of grapple with my own mind. How do you view it, out of interest?
And I think that's why we're here today, 100%. That's why we're here today, because there's certain people who are going through it right now. And what we want to do is motivate them to keep going and find a way out of the situation that maybe they found themselves in, or maybe just life in general has gotten them in. Not everybody is at fault for what they're going through. Some people are just going through something. And I hope we can motivate them to get through it with this song, All Good.
Well, the interesting thing is what you said. It's like, I think most of the time it's not their fault. Like, a lot of the challenges people have in their life are almost thrust upon them. Like, I think they're the worst ones of like, I didn't really do anything quote unquote wrong, but I'm here now and I am going through the shit. You know, people lose parents, people go through accidents, people just, things happen around them and they have to all of a sudden deal. I mean, that's a difficult thing to go through. And I think your song and you and your story will definitely help people go through that journey.
Now, it's known that they recently cleaned up the homeless encampment in East Hastings, Vancouver, here where I live in Canada. Now, they've cleaned this up to the point where the homeless people are now scattered, and they not only have lost their families already, but now they have lost their friends. And I believe that community and the organizations need to come together to help these people, because this is one of these situations where it's not directly their fault. You know, they have woken up again to being told you have to move. And these people have gone through it all their lives. I think as a community, we need to show support to them. We also need to reach out to organizations who can do something. And I believe that's where we can be putting our focus right now as a community.
So do you think homelessness is the biggest issue we have right now, or is it something that particularly like sticks out to you?
Yeah, I think rising home prices, the rising cost of rent, all of these situations that are going on in our communities, in our backyard, that not a lot of people are talking about. I really believe that we need to start talking about it and showing support to different individuals who need help. We can really prompt each other up during these times.
Well, I know down here in Australia, we definitely talk about it a lot. And I think this is probably the last thing that the people who listen to the show expected, but the Reserve Bank, obviously, they increased interest rates, and they've been increasing interest rates all year. So we're definitely feeling the pinch, and then the increase in cost of groceries and goods, and in general, is continuing to go up. And you know, inflation is kind of ridiculous. So it's funny that you bring it up. And I've said this before on the show, but we don't plan the show. So this is not like me and Reyes came together and were like, oh, let's talk about homelessness today. But it is interesting in terms of like what's happening in the economy and how that impacts like the everyday individual.
No, it's very true. And you go back to the grocery store topic that you just mentioned, and a lot of families are lacking the basic needs that they need. And I think with my music here, what I really want to do is create awareness of these different situations that are going on in our backyard, and find a way to maybe not solve them, but create a spark that spreads the light for somebody else and myself to get involved in different initiatives to give back to these families and, you know, try to help them out.
Do you think though that we we already know this? Like
We do already know
like
this. Yes. No, you're so
when
right.
we talk about things like awareness, it's interesting to me because if I walk down the street and I speak to 10 strangers, 10 out of 10 will be aware of homeless people. So it's interesting that like awareness is the goal because I actually don't think it's awareness. It's like, well, now we know. I mean, we hear it in Australia about LA all the time that their homeless situation is really tough. I think no one really knows how to fix it, or if they do, it isn't supported. And I think that's the weird place of like homelessness is an interesting issue because it's like, how do people like they're just living, but they're on this like we could solve it. There are empty buildings in every city. You know what
And
I'm
these are great questions because this is what I want to do. I want to start the conversation that allows us to come to a solution. And it really starts with us talking about this on Hip Hop Podcast because hip hop artists are really a staple in our communities. We do a lot to speak to the youth. We do a lot to speak to adults our age. And really, what I want to do, if I'm going to be speaking to people, we need to spread a positive message. So I think it's about starting a conversation like we're doing right now.
What's your
Because
take?
you say that a lot of people already know about this situation, but you know, I've walked down the street and I've heard a homeless person walk past me and say, "Hey, I feel invisible." And then I look at them and I say, "You feel invisible?" And so I spark a conversation with them and figure out why they feel invisible. And you know, there's an invisible minority and majority out here that need to be heard, and I would like to give them the platform for that.
Because it's a like dichotomy of like we're aware, but it's an uncomfortable truth.
It's exactly 100%. We're so comfortable, you know, driving our Mercedes Benzes or my BMW, and then I look over to my left and I see somebody starving on the side of the street, and everybody's walking past them. That's what I'm talking about. Some people feel invisible, but we just need to wake up and see that our neighbors are right there asking for help, and we can lend a hand if we're in a comfortable place.
Yeah, I see. I find this so like intriguing of like because there's obviously so many layers to each individual's case. You know what I mean? Like, you know, every person is different. Everyone's needs are different. Some have, you know, mental health issues. Some have, you know, familial issues, trauma issues. Some have, you know, some real shit that they are going through, some drug addictions, gambling, whatever it might be. Some just have bad luck. That's also out there. So it's like where it's this problem that we have, but there's no one catch all. And that's I think the interesting thing. And then the other thing is like people are in a way so would prefer to ignore it purely because it makes their life less uncomfortable. And it also means that you don't have to really directly interact with it. It can be in the background in your subconscious. So it's like this I don't know, it's weird that we as a society we could tomorrow all be like, hey, this is a problem we want to solve, but we don't. Like that's the
And we
weird,
all got
we just
together
don't.
with COVID. And now that COVID's over, I believe we could all get together and look at a few other issues that may need some tending to.
Mm. I don't know. All I know is that we probably won't fix it here.
Now, we're just starting the conversation here. Now, another thing that you go back to that you just spoke about there is mental health. And I really believe that even with drug addiction in Canada or Australia, really goes back to mental health. And I think that we need to put a lot of focus there as well as a country on mental health and understanding others and all the situations that you just spoke about.
Well, let me ask you this because there's a lot of things front of your mind, it seems. Like, how do you organize it for yourself? Because, like, you know, you've got a lot going on in terms of like you're coming back, you're wanting to make a music career. There's also these, you know, social economic things that you're talking about, that you're passionate about, clearly, like how do you have enough time for it all, number one, and number two, how do you prioritize? Because at some point something has to be a priority over another. So it's it's just interesting to me because I look at artists and I'm like, man, you barely have time to do anything else, let alone be an artist. It's all encompassing.
There's two things that I focus on in my life. One is my personal growth. And actually that comes in number two, because the first thing that comes up in my life is my daughter, my 1-year-old daughter. That is my number one priority in my life. So that's where I put 100% of my attention. And whenever I have extra time, which is my work, that is thinking about these different social issues, how I can get involved in the community through my music, and then creating music that resonates with people so that they have a role model they can look up to, that kind of looks like them, that kind of talks like them, but is really focused on making a change in their community. And this is what I'm focused on. One, my daughter, and two, my music.
Would you ever go to politics, do you think?
Would I ever be good at politics? I
Would,
actually
would you ever consider going into politics? I mean, you clearly want change and you clearly care. So it's like it's interesting that art is the way you went, like creativity is the way you went, when like you could also go down like politics. So I wonder if you've ever thought about that.
Well, actually, when I was 18 years old, I was the youth ambassador of British Columbia. I traveled to Tanzania. I traveled to South America. I traveled to Ottawa. I traveled everywhere with the United Nations, going into different communities, motivating the youth. And what I realized was, yes, I could potentially became the premier. But the thing is, I really wanted to be a role model that the youth could resonate with. And that's why I chose music as my path here. This isn't just about working or making money off music. This is 100% about my legacy and what I'm trying to leave behind as a role model in our society.
And what would you want that to be? Like if you had to put a crystal ball and you got to be like, this is the legacy that I leave behind. Like when it's all said and done, you know, when you look at in 20, 30 years, what does that ideally look like?
I want my daughter to look back and see how many people we helped around the world. I want my daughter to look and learn what it's like to learn from others and to listen, not just react. And I think this whole thing that I'm doing right now is all about her. It's all about me showing her the positive path in life. And I really want to thank all of my fans for helping me with that as well.
Where can I want to shift to your accident for a moment, because I think it's important and obviously an important part of your story. But can you tell me what happened? Can you tell me like the summation of the incident, where it left you, and then obviously we'll get into what the recovery looks like and how you get back to where you are now.
Yeah, so you can imagine just driving around, leisurely, and then all of a sudden you're at a four-way stop and you're about to take a right turn, and then all of a sudden somebody rear ends you and hits your car into the intersection. And
So you were hit from behind
I was hit from behind while stationary
and then pushed into on was it oncoming traffic?
into the intersection. So I don't want to get too into the situation there, but what I can tell you is it was dramatic enough to put a pause, I guess I would say, on my music career. And uh, even after my rehabilitation of going to chiropractors and going to uh, the swimming pool and the gym, I lost a lot of my motivation to get back to working in the community and being who I really am. And now, after having my daughter, it's really inspired me to get back to my music. And especially now that I'm over my rehabilitation, it's really inspired me to get back into my music.
Because I saw a photo of you in the hospital, and it's not a pleasant photo. If anyone is wondering, I'm sure they're not. But I saw a photo on your socials of like because you suffered like some significant injuries.
Yeah, a back injury in my C3 spine section, spinal cord.
Were they ever worried that you may never, regain full function?
It was a possibility, but I took 4 years of rehabilitation and different methods to get back to being able to perform, and that really, it really did help.
And so, what did that look like? You said kind of physio walking in. I'm assuming he was walking in water to like regain a little bit of strength. Like, what was the regiment like
Going
throughout that period?
swimming, going to the gym, going to the chiropractor, repeating this weekly for 4 years. So this was part of my life.
And before that, you were obviously making music, and then
Making music nonstop, going out into the community, doing hoodies for the homeless, giving back to the youth in different high schools. Hoodies for the homeless was amazing because I got to accept different donations for people in the community, and then I went out and I gave hoodies and different clothing articles in Victoria to the homeless. So if somebody was wearing a jacket like this, that is a beautiful jacket, they were able to give it to somebody less fortunate, and they were able to be proud of what they were wearing. So that was a really cool campaign that I did with my music before the crash.
was it because like I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes, right? I'm trying to be like, what would, where would I be mentally? Where would I be emotionally? And I think I'd be totally fucked, like completely an absolute mess in terms of like, I have this vision of where my life is going. And like we said at the show at the beginning, through no fault of your own, you've been placed in one of the scariest scenarios that could ever happen to anyone, which is number one, a fight for life, but number two, a fight to just be able to live the life that you were living before. What was that impact like for the people around you? Because obviously you would have gone through, the difficulty and emotion. How was that when you looked at your loved ones and you looked at the people around you who were also there for support?
It's hard even when you can't pick up just the normal things that you're used to picking up. If you say you got to move and now you got to pack some boxes and take those boxes, now you're asking your family to come and help you and taking time out of their day. And people want to help, but people are so busy, right? So it does affect everybody around you. It affects yourself, it affects everybody. um but when it comes back to the music, me being involved in the community was a huge thing. I looked around for the past few years. I haven't seen anybody do what I used to do. I haven't seen anybody locally here, at least, uh, make the impact that I tried to make. And it would have been amazing to see somebody take that on. But it looks like I had to get back to this, and I have to be the example that I want to see.
Why do you think nobody else did it?
I have no idea, but I just think a lot of people are focused on copying what they see on social media, um, and recreating things that they see already. And I think we really need to start creating what's already in our minds and what we want to see outside in reality. We need to be the um, entrepreneurs of today, the entrepreneurs and the humanitarians of today.
Mm. Well, I do agree that somebody needs to start. That's the that's always the mantle of like someone needs to be the first person.
And what is really cool, which I'd like to talk about, is how Complex got involved with All Good here. And they they did an article on it. Complex is huge, 10 million subscribers on YouTube. Complex was one of those channels, one of the first channels to support, just like yourself, who got involved and wrote an article, right? And they really believe that this track is one of the Canadians' best new tracks, one of the best new tracks in Canada. And that was really a huge honor. But I just have to say that they made an initiative to get involved too as a big network. And it's just about getting involved and spreading a message of positivity, just like we're doing today.
How was the feeling of like how did you find out that Complex wrote the article? Because like I always imagine, right? Like, how does this happen and how's the news delivered? Like, do you just like, holy shit, my name is mentioned, or do they reach out first? Like, what's that process like?
Okay, well, it's kind of crazy. I just woke up in the morning and I look at my phone and it says Complex tagged you. And I'm like, okay. And I'm excited. I show my daughter, I'm like, Complex tagged us. She doesn't even know what Complex is. um, and it was pretty amazing. And then I look at the article, I'm tagged in it. It says best new Canadian tracks of this week. I click it and all of a sudden I scroll down and there's All Good by Alexander Reyes and Madchild. Crazy.
Did you message Madchild?
Oh, of course I let him know. Of course I let him know, but that's between us.
What did you say?
Oh, that's a story for the future for sure, for sure.
Oh, so you're keeping us on bated breath. I'm not going to get the
Yes,
exclusive.
no, I have, I appreciate it.
Well, all I know is that I definitely would have been shouting from rooftops if Complex mentioned me and mentioned what I'm doing. So Complex, this is my plug for Complex. Is what I actually use this for, is for my own benefit. Is like, hey Complex, if you actually want to write an article on me, please feel free. I'm never going to
Oh,
turn that down.
that
Right?
that was amazing. That was amazing. And so another thing that I woke up to in the beginning of this run was I woke up to being on Northern Bars with Mercules, Pressa, Drake was on there, Nicki Minaj on New Music Friday. I woke up to being on New Music Friday with Nicki Minaj. I thought that was pretty crazy. Not everybody just wakes up to one morning being on New Music Friday with Nicki Minaj.
What was your first thought? Like, all these things start happening, right? What's your thought process? Like, because it feels like, to be honest, when I'm talking to you, you're still somewhat in disbelief that this is all happening.
Yeah, it's a real life success story. It's crazy. You see a lot of stars pop up, like Ice Spice, and it's a label plant. But this is really a comeback story. I woke up one morning to being on Northern Bars. I woke up to being on New Music Friday with Nicki Minaj. That just doesn't happen. That is amazing. That is because of the fans. That is because of the support. And I have to say thank you. Thank you very much
I will
to
say though,
everybody.
Ice Spice does make some fire music.
Oh, for sure, 100%. But I'm not a munch.
Well, yeah. All I'm saying is it's like, music is such an interesting place right now in terms of like the hip hop wave of like, we're seeing the come up of drill, the come up of like new artists, and like by new I mean, just new talent. And it's amazing to see. Like, where do you think your place is within that space?
I was driving around the other day and I love this question. Thank you very much. It goes back to what I did as soon as I got some traction with my music. The first thing I did was say, hey, let's get involved in the community. Let's create a community within this fan base that is happening around All Good, and let's get involved in the community. So people went out. Even in the UK, there was poster calls in the UK. People went out and put posters up in their hometowns for All Good. And I think that really was the first step towards people getting involved in their community. That was huge. People putting up posters in their communities. I have it on my Instagram. It's the most amazing thing to see my face in a coffee shop. Um, so that was really cool. But I think my place is getting people involved in the community, giving people a role model they can resonate with, and showing people a positive path forward. I think that's my place in hip hop.
How did you get people to put up the posters out of interest? What was your message to them?
I can't even remember. It just happened. It's just like, it's just the way the movement happened. It's, you know, I posted on Instagram first. I created this on Photoshop, this poster here, and then I said, DM me if you want to get the file. And all of a sudden, people all over the place started DMing me and saying, "Hey, I want the file." And I said, "Wow, this is crazy. People are actually messaging me asking for the file." And so I sent them the file. And next thing you know, there's Instagram posts, people sharing it, telling me, "Hey, look, I put up the poster in my town." Some people printed them off on their black and white printers. Some people went to the library to get it printed for free. Some people invested and went to a poster shop and even paid their hard-earned money to get posters made just to promote this single. I think people did it because they believe in the song, but because the song is part of them. They lived the song, and it's crazy that they got involved like this.
Yeah. It must I keep saying it, but like it must feel fake in a way. Like you're living in this weird reality of like,
But I everything I did as a youth, creating my own youth program called Loud Alive, getting involved in the community with hoodies for the homeless, all these things I did as a youth, and every single summer, praying that I would become a rapper. And then, I put out my first song back in 4 years, and really all that dreaming, all those years of dreaming, became reality. And really, I just need to tell people, do not give up, keep pushing, because it could happen at any time.
where was your music before the accident? Like, where were you at in your career in terms of the music that you were making, in terms of the quality of the music? Like, where was it prior to the break?
Prior to the break, I did United Nations. United Nations took me all around the world. As I spoke about before, I was a United Nations youth ambassador for British Columbia. So that means I traveled around. But while I was traveling, I was doing my music. I was performing. I was doing fundraisers um, for tsunamis around the world, and collecting money through my music and donating every single dollar back into different organizations that could help, like the Red Cross. I fundraised a lot of money for the Red Cross with my song, The United Nations. Um, and it was all about the strife that they were facing in the Middle East, something that not a lot of people were talking about. But fast forward a few years, everybody was talking about it. So, I can say that I was one of the first to start this subject about, uh, you know, different stuff happening in our community.
And so, were you using your music to purely do the humanitarian work, or was there other music that was like to really kick off your hip hop or your rap career?
100%, it was my music first, and then becoming a humanitarian just followed with that because of the topic of my music. I would create music about different current events happening in the world, different tsunamis, different earthquakes, talking about Japan. I would talk about any current event that you saw in the news. I was all over the news as a youth, um, making my impact, making sure that in the hip hop community, that people my age knew about different social issues, because it was like using hip hop as a vehicle to deliver my message, and my message is what I saw in the world.
And so, like when you're looking at it, like because I was thinking as you were speaking, I was like, huh, you could always go down the route of like historical hip hop too, like talking about current events. But I'm interested, like because obviously you're passionate, and I wonder where this passion comes from. Like, is there like a source of like this passion of like a source of like why humanitarianism, why all these things? Because you obviously care, but like, do you know the moment of like when you found that out, of like when it began for you and you're like, oh shit, I have to do something?
I think it was it was socials class. I was in socials class as a youth, and I'm sitting in socials class, and I'm listening to what's going on in class, and I say, "Holy cow! I need to write a song about this." And that was that moment. Actually, I wrote a song about it, and that was United Nations.
So what was it that was the first topic for you?
It goes way back from there. I started music when I was 9 years old, so it was getting that little desktop microphone and rapping real close to the speaker, and then saying, "Hey, Dad, come check out this song." And he always bugs me about it till this day. Come check out this song. So it's all about. It goes back way before the social issues. It goes back to, I don't know how, but I was just born with this. I was just born this way, and it's just who I am as a person.
Because did your family listen to music growing up?
Well, of course, there's always music in the house. Michael Jackson, uh, anything we could get our hands on. Music was a staple in our home,
And what were
and
your?
I'm sure
I was going to say, I'm sure they weren't listening to like gangster rap though.
it was more like Will Smith, but
Yeah. Like Will Smith back in the day, he was so good.
definitely killed it.
Well, unfortunately now, I don't know what the deal is with him. He's lost so much credibility. Like,
Will Smith, yes,
yeah,
yes.
between
Unfortunately, yeah.
between all his relationship with Jada, which is a shit show to say the least, and then obviously what happened with Chris Rock. It's like I think in the weirdest way, he was on a pedestal for a lot of people in terms of what he represented, and then it was like, oh no, we're seeing the fall of a hero in a way.
There we go. It's actually very sad because look, you have, and I have to say this because I'm in multiple communities here because I'm also mixed. So I look at these two people as idols back in the day, and now I look at them as two role models who couldn't hold it together. Because you have to look at the special from Chris Rock attacking Will Smith back, and then Will Smith coming on stage and starting the whole thing with slapping him. I mean, at the end of the day, we've lost two role models here because you can never fix that much damage. You have really affected not only yourself, but the people who looked up to you. And I think that was a mistake on both parts, being reactive by Chris Rock, but also by starting it on Will Smith's end. So unfortunately, we've seen some damage to two of our role models here.
So I definitely get the fall of Will Smith, but in my opinion, as like the showman, I'm like, I get 100% am in the camp of like, hey, you're a stand-up comedian. He didn't do any interviews about it. He refused to talk about it, and the only time he talked about it was on stage. So I think if there's any time, it's to make a joke out of it and like use. So I actually think he did it pretty well. He had the opportunity to like go on news and social media and talk about it all the time, but he didn't. He just made a special, and that's like his way. He went back to his art of like, hey, I'm going through this shit. This shit happened to me, and I'm going to express myself about it in my art form, as opposed to just actively going out there and creating news and creating stories. And obviously, everyone wants to know about it. We all like, I would have been like, hell yes, please tell me about it. But I think out of all the ways he could have done it, I think he did a pretty good job, all things considered, Chris Rock.
And I love what you said there because at the end there you said people express themselves through their art, you know, and that's even what all good is about. It's about expressing about how you can go through a hard time and still come out on top. And it's about expressing yourself through art. I've asked multiple people on Instagram to please get involved by sharing what they do best, what they love, what is their art, and how can they get involved by sharing different skills that they have. I love it. I love seeing people get involved and expressing themselves through their art.
Were
It's
you
crazy.
always artistic as a child? Like, were you always gravitating towards art in general, like being expressive through creative aspects?
100%. Every single day I woke up and made videos or recorded music or found a new way to create something in my community, create a youth program for the youth uh, that didn't have a program, um, or didn't have a program that they felt proud to be included in. We created this ourselves as youth in my community here, 100%.
And did you get that from your parents, do you think?
Yes, 100%. I think my parents are very strong individuals. My father is a businessman, and I look up to how he was an entrepreneur. Um, I look up to my uncle who was on CBC radio in South Africa and was a broadcaster, and I look up to these different achievements. Um, I think having strong role models in your life is very positive. It's something that everybody needs.
Mm, I agree with you. I think, having people to look up to is critical in the foundation of who you become. And like it's weird. I think about it two ways. I'm like, you need a role model and you need someone to look up to, but then you don't want to idolize them too much because, like we said, the fall of Will Smith is like if you idolized him and the fall of your hero, it's almost like that your hero wasn't your hero the whole time. It was like it like crushes you. Like I have people that I look up to, and like if they were to fall, I would be like, who am I? Like, what does that mean for me if my hero and the person I've looked up to my whole career, my whole life, all of a sudden is exposed? So it's interesting because you have to balance being impressed by and using them to motivate you, but also not treating them like godly figures. Because I think that's what we do sometimes, especially with celebrities. It's like they have no faults. They're not human anymore. And so I think that we're in this place of like figuring it out.
It's true. You can't idolize someone too much. You need to find your own path in life, and that's what it comes back to the beginning of this podcast where we talked about finding your path. You need to follow your own path, and create and be creative, but create things that you want to see in the world. You can't just rely on what's already being created and create new variations of it. Create something new because it's in you to do that.
Can I ask, how did you stay motivated enough during your rehab to keep it going? Like, because I also read that, you were not motivated to make music as well. But like, how did you get through it? Like, what's the tangible advice that you would give people who are in that hardship now? Like they're in the midst of it and you've obviously made it through, but how did you get through it? How did you, because at the beginning, you don't know it's going to take 4 years. At the beginning, you're like, maybe it'll take 6 months, maybe it'll take 12, maybe and all of a sudden, 4 years later, that's how long it takes. So, like, how did you get through that of like not knowing when it's going to end?
Yeah, that is the hardest part, not knowing when it's going to end. I think there's a lot of people out there who are even facing having cancer right now, and they're going through a struggle that I can't speak on because I haven't been through it, but I can tell you something that they're probably going through what you just spoke about. That's what you just made me think about here. Okay. A little less about myself here for a second. I think there's a lot of people stuck in the middle there, trying to get from here to there. And it's very hard in the middle. You don't see the end result yet, but you're pushing for it. And you just got to keep tunnel vision. You just got to keep your tunnel vision. You got to stay focused on what you want in life. And if you keep that tunnel vision, all the background noise becomes background noise. And you just start to see the end goal clear. And my end goal was just getting back to at least being able to do everything that I was doing before the crash. And then once I had my daughter, it was really, hey, look, I'm good now. I have all of this in me. I might as well just put out a song and see what happens. And I guess what happened was crazy.
Well, I think that in addition to that advice, my personal take on it has always been, and obviously I'm not going through these battles, and I haven't gone through these battles, but just taking the life lessons that I've learned, and anyone can tell me to shut the fuck up, but it is obviously their own perspective. But my view on these things is like setting goals of like, you need to set milestones of like, I cannot see the end, but I can see far enough in front of me to be able to set that as a target. And then once I get there, okay, done, tick. Now what? Now what's my next move? And I think that allows you to break it up into small chunks of like, even if it's small enough to be like, I have to get up today. Like I have to get out of bed and I have to go and I have to hustle or I have to go and do this. That and being able to achieve that allows you to finish the day and be like, okay, what does tomorrow look like? What's next? What else can I? And I think that is the way we get through stuff is by breaking it down. Like if you want to lose 50 kilos, you don't look at the 50. You got to lose 1 kilo at a time, 1 pound at a time. You're not going to just be at the end. You're going to be slowly, incrementally getting there. And so I'm a big believer in just small targets, consistently small targets, so that you can tick wins off. Because if you just say it has to be the 50 kilos or 50 pounds or whatever it is, then it feels like a mountain that you cannot climb.
And everybody has a reward system. We're human beings, so we have a reward system. So it's very good to set these different type of goals and achieve each goal, just like you're saying, so that you feed your reward system and you understand that you're on the right track. But still keep that tunnel vision towards where you're going. Don't get off track with all the background noise.
Yeah. And it's just consistency. And it's weird because like you spoke about motivation, and I think the one thing that we don't speak about enough is discipline of like,
Yes, sir.
because motivation is a great emotion. Like it feels awesome to be motivated and it feels awesome to feel good because you're like, I'm hungry, I'm going, I want it. But the truth is, you're not going to be motivated all the time. If anything, you're not going to be motivated most of the time. And it's about being disciplined enough and have the desire, burn enough for you to do the shit that you don't want to do. Like, I'm sure for you, there's things that you don't want to do. You don't want to fly sitting in cramped seats. That's difficult. You don't want to get up really early. Like, do you want to get up at 5 a.m.?
I
Not
kind of like it.
well, maybe you do, but maybe, there's,
Go getter.
I always say to people, like, I record quite often and I get up at like
But I
5:30.
totally understand what you're getting at here 100%. There's things that we don't like to do necessarily all the time that we have to do, and that's discipline.
But I think the rewards come with that. And that's what it's like. The motivation is enough for you to start, and the discipline is enough for you to make sure that you don't stop. I think they go hand in hand. You need to be motivated to start, but then once you start, you need to be disciplined enough not to quit.
Yes, 100%. And if you do quit something, always start something new, because you got to keep yourself focused and keep yourself busy.
Can I ask, how did you get in touch with Madchild to get onto this track?
It was a great. It was just, have you ever heard of being at the right place at the right time?
I have.
And that was one of those situations. I'm sure we're going to speak further on it, but I can tell you right now that life and some people say the universe, but life is just good. Karma is real. And I did a lot in my community, and I'm very thankful for Madchild getting on this song and giving me a platform to showcase what I've done in the past and what I want to do in the future here. I'm very thankful. And I think the fans are very thankful too. This was a great opportunity and it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, and it was amazing, and I'm very thankful.
Because I did read that you bumped into him at the studio.
Yes.
What was that like? Like, number one, to bump into an artist like Madchild, but then also to talk to him and for this process to evolve
And
into.
we're both professionals. We're both professionals, and we're not just professionals. We're people who care about others. And this song was really created from a real life story to motivate others to get through that long road. And it's done exactly that. This song has helped people. I get messages on Instagram from people I've never met all over the country, in different countries, telling me that All Good has really pushed them to keep going. So, you know, we just put our stories together and we put real life into a song, and the outcome is amazing.
What do you see as your next step? Like, obviously, this single you're promoting now, but what's next? Like, what are you building off the back of this?
I have an album coming out pretty soon. I'm working very hard on making sure that it's wrapped up for everybody.
Do you have a time frame for it?
I don't have a time frame that I can announce right now, but I can tell you on this show, the first time I will say in public that yes, I'm working on an album. I have Swizz from Funk Volume. Back in the day, Hobson, I met him before the I Am Raw tour. He invited me back to every single concert in Vancouver. Anytime that he came back on tour, he took me out to lunch with Damien and Justin, who is Swizz, and gave me a lot of game when I was younger. And I have to say that all that game, Marcus, I'm just saying right now because you might see this, all that game that you taught me and that Hobson taught me is still in my head, and I really appreciate it. It's crazy to see somebody who had a dream become a real star. I saw somebody who literally was before the I Am Raw tour become a star. I've never told this story before. It's crazy.
Well, we'll
And
get
then now
the
I'm in this.
exclusive.
Yes, you guys get the exclusive. I'm sitting in this situation now with my song All Good, and I'm saying, wow, you know, I saw it happen from a different perspective as a fan. And now I'm seeing how it feels as the artist. And that's crazy.
So, can
So
I just confirm you're getting Hobson on that project as well?
this we're going to talk about that in the future.
That's, I'm going to say this. That's, my background is in sales, and I'm a pretty good listener. So you don't have to confirm, but I'm going to assume yes. The audience can infer from whatever, but hey, we get the exclusive. Album is coming, maybe or maybe not, with Hobson. That's right.
And not too far away.
Not too far away. Well, hopefully it drops, this year at some point. I'm sure you're keen to have it drop pretty quickly. I wonder, is All Good a plan for the lead single, or are you gonna have other lead singles?
There's going to be a few lead singles with a few artists that people know about, and I'm really excited for everybody to see who I've been working with and see who's on this album. And I want them to know that it's done independently, and this is done um, with the support of the people.
Can I ask? This is a question I always wonder for artists, and I don't usually ask this question because it's more of an egocentric question. I try to stay away from it, but like, obviously, you're having a lot of media coverage. You're having a lot of people talk to you. You're having a lot of people like express their gratitude. But why this show? Why did you choose to come on this show? Because I always wonder these things of like, I'm just an Aussie guy down in Australia, like a world away, essentially. And I've been pretty fortunate in the sense of I've spoken to some dream guests of mine. Like I will say time and time again, speaking to Cuban Link, was amazing, and he worked with Big Pun. Big Pun is my favorite rapper of all time, and obviously he's no longer with us. But to be able to speak to Cuban Link twice and listen to the stories that he had was like a dream come true. So I always wonder like why, because it feels like I'm living similar to you in a different world, but like I'm interested with everything that's happening in your life, what's with everything that's happening in your career right now, why this show that you chose to come on?
Because your show is organic, your show is real. It's 100% real. I looked at your page, I looked at your content, and it's not just some facade. It's real content, and I love it. And it's me. It's exactly what I represent is organic, real content that relates to people. And your show was a platform that I could get on and speak my mind um, without a script. I asked you, hey, can I get the questions first, just to see if there was a script? And you said there's no script, and I said this is freaking perfect. That's how I roll.
Well, that works for me because, as I said, yeah, it's always a worry to me when interviewers like or people are like, "Hey, send me the questions in advance," because it's like, well, then why are we doing this in the first place? Like, if that's what you want, the podcast is not the realm for it because it just becomes this pre-planned shit show of I know exactly what I'm going to hear, and they I hate pre-planned answers. That's what drives me crazy as a fan. And like when I hear my favorite artists talk and when I hear interviewers interview, I'm like, this sucks because I'm not getting the genuine juice of like what makes you tick. And I think that's what every fan wants. That's what I want is like I want to know you beyond the pre-planned. I want to know you behind the facade of behind the stage. And I think that's what resonates with people ultimately. And I genuinely think you're all interesting, everyone that I talk to. So uh, why not?
And you have C Lance that you recently did an interview with too. He's very known in the genre of hip hop. So you know you're doing very good for yourself, and I think I want to say congratulations. You know I do.
Well, I appreciate it because yeah, C Lance. So, as I said, sometimes I don't know why people say yes. In the back of my head, I'm like, really? Like, really? You're saying yes? But hey, I don't question it anymore. I'm just like, I'm just thankful that it comes and thankful that people like you and people like C Lance and the countless number of guests that I've had on the show continue to say yes and continue to want to come on because ultimately, you know, I could be just a guy talking into a mic by myself, but this is always better with people sharing their story and being able to like inspire others and give an insight into the creativity that really creates music and creates the energy that feeds a lot of people and really motivates a lot of people.
Yeah, and people need to be motivated. They need something to to move with. You know, they need that movement to be a part of, and it's hopefully it's a positive one. So
Well, with you, it will be. That's what we can at least guarantee. We can only guarantee what we have, what we control. But I just wanted to say, you know, man, congratulations on everything that you've achieved. Congratulations on overcoming what you've overcome. Congratulations on, you know, now having a child and being able to be a role model, not only to obviously fans and people you don't know, but to people you do know. And I'm looking forward to seeing your continued success. The stage is set essentially for you.
no, I
You're,
appreciate
you're
it
in a
big time.
place that it can definitely happen.
I appreciate it big time, and I hope in the future here we continue to work together as well, and we continue to create some content together because it's all about networking and creating a community that you can network with. That is most important here because it's not just about me or you; it's about the whole bigger picture here, which is you know creating something that people can be proud of and happy about.
I agree with you, man, and I'm sure you'll do a tour at some point, and then obviously we'll have to do this face to face. as much as I love technology and as much as technology makes this possible, I'm always like, man, face to face would be so much better. You get like the real energy face to face. But I cannot agree more. I think that the more people you know, the more connections you have, the better it is. And if you're good at building relationships, well, hey, all power to you. Because I think this business is a relationships business. As much as people think it's a talent business, that's only a part of the piece. You got to have, you got to be a good person sometimes.
No, you do, and you have to not just do things with yourself um, in mind. You have to do things with others in mind. And I really appreciate you allowing me to come on this podcast today. I really appreciate you taking your time out because you could have also interviewed anybody today. And I really appreciate that you interviewed me. And maybe
Well,
I'll ask you, why did you accept interviewing me?
well, it's a good question. I like that you stole my question, put me under the spotlight. You know, usually I do it the other way around. Um, so I'm not as used to it. But I think what I liked about what I saw from you was the potential for an interesting story and an interesting conversation. And I base a lot of my decisions and the reason I do this podcast and a big reason why I talk to people is because I genuinely believe that every person has one good story in them. And so I knew you had one, and then you also made impactful music, and you add those two together, and I was like, well, how could I say no? So it was those two things, and reading what you went through and reading about the journey that you're on, I was like, yeah, I would be kind of crazy not to.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on this show. So this is what I have to do moving forward here. I have to set a precedence for other hip hop musicians to also get involved in their community. I hope I can challenge other rappers on this show, on this podcast. Before we end it, I want to make sure that I challenge other rappers in every single community around the world to get involved and do something. Do something positive. Even if your music isn't positive, that's fine. You're spreading a message of awareness about what happens in your community, but also get involved. You can do turkey drives. You can donate clothing. There's a lot that you can do.
Love that message, man. And I only have one more question for you. And it's a last question that I always finish on the show, but it's probably the hardest question. If you had to recommend one album, it can be any genre of music, cannot be your own music, that everybody should listen to at least once to get an appreciation of, what would it be?
Have you heard Lawnmower Man?
No, I haven't.
That is one of my favorites. One second here. Lawnmower Man. Perfect. Amazing. You guys have to search it up. That's
What's
my
the,
favorite.
what's the album?
Lawnmower Man
By who's it by?
by Madchild. I
Oh,
was
by
just ready.
Madchild. Of course, it was by Madchild. But as I said, man, absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Look forward to seeing what else you do. I'm looking forward to seeing the release of that album. As we said, I got the exclusive. So anybody else out there, we got it here first on the Hip Hop Hustle podcast. But yeah, man, amazing things. As we said, you've been mentioned in Complex. You were also on CBC on the news as well.
I got all my fans right now are hitting me up like crazy. Sorry about that. Look at my, you guys are amazing.
Well, hey, it's a good problem to have. And I'm looking forward to them continue to do that. As I said, man, absolute pleasure. And for everybody else, if you haven't listened to the song, listen to All Good. It's in the background of Reyes's a video. have you heard All Good? If the answer is no, you know what you need to do. Go listen to it. But
Go
man,
listen to it. And just like you mentioned earlier there, yes, I'll be you'll see me on many different news stations coming up pretty soon here. CBC, you're gonna see me on quite a few others. I'm very excited to keep sharing this music video. I want to share this podcast with everybody I can, and I'm very appreciative of being on here as well.